now. And okay, so I'm going to show my screen. I just have a little bit of intro stuff to go through, tell you how to use the system, all that good stuff. And welcome back to many of you. I see many of you have been here before. Let's see. All right. So can everybody see my ISA screen? Walt, can you see it?
No, but I'm set up to not see it. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Uh,
There's a questions and a chat section in the panel over on your right. If you guys can just let me know, awesome. Thank you, Sharon. Thank you, Noelle. All right, so you guys can see my screen, so let's get started. So again, welcome. My name is Sherry Worthington. I am the, wow, what am I? I'm the program chair for the ISA Marketing and Sales Summit. I'm the VP-elect of the Pubs Department for ISA, and I'm also, my real job is I run the marketing agency Talesian Technology. So lots of hats to wear, but today I want to focus on the Marketing and Sales Summit. And we are presenting this series of webinars. For those of you who have seen, this is about our fifth or sixth one this year. And we've got some great speakers talking about a variety of, obviously, sales and marketing topics. The ISA, for those of you who don't know, is the International Society of Automation. We have tens of thousands of members around the world focusing on engineering and the business of automation. And the marketing and sales group works within the management division of ISA, and we cover a lot of management related topics. The Marketing and Sales Summit is an event that Walt and I came up with, wow, a long time ago.
yeah,
What, 20
15
years
years
ago?
ago,
Yeah,
15, 20
exactly.
years ago.
So we came up with this a long time ago, and then we are now in our 8th year of actually putting on the summit, and it brings together all levels of people from VPs of large corporations, presidents of small ones, directors of marketing, product managers, sales managers, system integrators, you name it, to talk about marketing and sales. You know, we all know it's a challenge. The internet has changed everything dramatically, from our products to the way we communicate with our customers and our distribution channels. So we've got to figure out how to deal with it. So we bring in experts to talk about a variety of issues. We've got some fascinating topics coming up this year. This year's summit is September 11th to 13th in New Orleans at the absolutely gorgeous W Hotel. If you haven't been to any of the W's, I highly recommend it. They're beautiful hotels, and we've got some interesting keynotes and plenaries, as well as breakout sessions on a whole bunch of different marketing and sales topics. Two of the interesting things that I can't wait for is our opening plenary session is a panel discussion Wednesday evening, September 11th, and it's about social media during a crisis. For those of you who are on Twitter, you may have seen some of the hubbub that happened during and after the Boston Marathon crisis that we had up here. And what happened is Twitter became the primary news channel for a lot of the information flowing out of the Boston Police Department and other agencies like that. But in the meantime, a lot of marketing people had set up these, regular old product or, broadcasts to go out also through Twitter or Facebook, or sending PR to editors. And it ended up getting in the middle of the news stream that a lot of people were carefully watching. And a lot of people got really bent out of shape. We even saw editors make public requests on Twitter to stop sending them press releases. So, we'd have to go back into automated systems that were set up to broadcast press releases to editors, and turn those off. We had to pause Twitter streams, and it turns out some of the tools that are used don't have pause buttons. So there were all sorts of issues that had to be worked through, and the question arose, what do you do when a crisis happens? We have the horrible natural disaster in Oklahoma. Do we pause for that? Do we pause for the marathon terrorism? What's important enough to make us pause? So we're going to have a discussion about that, and then a talk about the tools and what can and cannot be done to turn them on, turn them off. Anyway, I think it'll be fascinating. Um, so that's my little plug on the Marketing and Sales Summit. I highly recommend you come down. It's really good networking, really good learning environment. It's lots of good discussion at all levels, and this particular plenary panel is one that interests me. And then we also have an unconference where we're going to have some working group discussions that aren't really planned ahead of time, and we'll put a bunch of people in a room and we'll talk about what's hot. And one of the topics, we have three of them going on in parallel. One of them we're actually going to determine via email ahead of time from the attendees. So it's, you guys get to choose what we talk about. So anyway, we've got a lot of interesting stuff going on. Please check out the website and please register. All right, so back to the technicalities of what's in your little control panel that you have over on the side of your screen. You will see that there is a section that's called questions. All right, if you click on the arrow and expand that, some of you have already found it and you were giving me yeses that you can see the screen. That is the place to actually post your questions. Walt has a ton of material to cover, so he and I talked about it and figured, let's try to actually get through all the material, and then we'll do a big Q&A session at the end of the talk and address everyone's issues. So if you would, as you think of questions, post them here in that little section, and I will keep track of them, and then we will get to them in the order that they come in once Walt is finished. Well, anything else I need to warn people about?
That's pretty much it. This presentation was originally my master class at the ISA Marketing and Sales Summit, so it's somewhat compressed. I'm going to try not to go too fast, but we'll see where we go.
Hit all the good stuff. Okay, so I've made you presenter now, Walt. You can show your screen, and then we will be off and running.
Everybody should see the first slide. My name is Walt Boyes, and I'm editor of Control and ControlGlobal.com and a principal at Spitzer and Boyes LLC. In both endeavors, I'm continuously involved in either the uses or misuses of public relations. I've been either doing public relations and marketing or having them done to me for nearly 40 years now, and I've seen a lot of changes, but not so many as I've seen in just the last half of the last decade. We're going to try and wade through the landscape of communications and try to see what the current best practices are.
Walt?
Some of those, yes.
Hold on, we can't see your screen yet. Did you hit show my screen?
I thought I did. Let's see here. Show my screen. All right. Now everybody should be able to see it.
Give us a sec for it to upload via that wonderful DSL connection. There we go. All right.
Okay.
Okay, we're all set now. Thank you.
Some of those best practices haven't changed in decades, and some are as new as your very last tweet. Did you ever ask yourself why automation companies, system integrators, and manufacturers alike don't really do PR? Is the answer simply that the management staff doesn't understand what it is and what it's for? Do you understand what public relations is, and do you understand what it's for? Public relations, PR, marketing communications, it's all the same, a fundamental part of any integrated marketing program, any integrated marketing communications program, any branding program. PR is about communication and communicating, and we'll talk about the way PR is essential in the automation market. Public relations is the art and practice of communicating in a structured way. The purpose of public relations is to create the desired effect in the minds of the recipients, your customers, your stakeholders. So what does this really mean? Well, PR practitioners typically are attempting to present a concept, an idea, or a series of ideas, like the values a corporation represents, its brand image, in a way that is structured to cause belief or stimulate action or add value or any combination of the three. Display advertising is designed to cause an action. It's strictly a push designed to get you to call an 800 number, request information from a website, call a salesperson. PR is a bit more general than that. Public relations is simply about creating positive buzz in a structured way around an idea. In essence, a public relations campaign is aimed at all of the stakeholders of an enterprise, while advertising is aimed directly at customers, people who are buying now or who are in immediate danger of buying now. PR serves analysts, customers, shareholders, the media, and all of the other entities with an interest in the enterprise as a whole. There's a concept known as the marketing mix. It's all of the tools and strategies that an enterprise uses to communicate its values, its products, and its services to the public and to customers. The marketing mix includes display advertising, trade show participation, direct marketing, field sales, online marketing, and public relations. Public relations is an integral part of the marketing mix. In fact, it's the glue that holds that mix together. Most enterprises do public relations. They just do it unconsciously, and therefore they don't do it well. The topics we'll cover in this talk are designed to show you how to do it well. The 6 basic functions of PR in the industrial enterprise are talking to the media, product marketing issues like new product introductions, new product releases, participation in trade shows, symposia, and forums, gaining editorial coverage, communicating with all of the stakeholders of your company, and crisis management. There is a 7th function, sort of a meta function, that's comprised of all 6 of these plus some extra. And that function is management and conservation of your brand. Customer empowerment, employee empowerment. The internet and social media from email to Twitter have made it necessary for even control system integrators to know how to direct, not control, the message they want to present to the public, their customers, and their employees and suppliers. It matters what you say, and it matters what everybody else says. Just Google www, insert name of company, sucks.com, and you will see exactly what I mean. You don't have products, do you? Well, of course you do, even if you're just a systems integrator and it's only a proprietary template or two. But one of the products that you have is the reputation of your products themselves. And I will bet that you don't really see that as a product in and of itself. You can use the same skills that PR brings to vendors and the big customers to gain benefit for your products, your reputation, and your ability to attract and keep customers, regardless of how big or small a company you are. Trade shows are not dead. They're undergoing a sea change, and as the big old ones die, new trade shows are born, more targeted and more effective. But how you do at a trade show depends nearly entirely on you and not on the trade show management. At a trade show, you can kill several birds with the same stone. Your customers can attend, your suppliers, your vendor partners will attend, your competitors will attend. Use a trade show, even when you aren't exhibiting. People don't often think about attending a trade show and not exhibiting and meeting customers, vendor partners, and so forth, but you can. Schedule visits to your vendor partners, and above all, schedule visits with your customers. Invite them to the show. You might even pay their way. Make sure you have something to show them that's interesting and new and targeted to their needs. This can be incredibly lucrative. You can get a customer to meet with you away from all his office distractions. Exactly what is that worth to you? Now, don't just go to a trade show and wander around aimlessly. Now, editorial coverage, I can assure you, is wonderful because I'm an editor and especially because it's cheap. But it's not free. You have to earn it. And it imparts the imprimatur of the editor on the coverage. Writing articles, getting your customers to byline articles, and producing white papers and tutorials is a very simple and relatively inexpensive way to build up your reputation quite impressively and increase the number of customers that you can touch. Building customer bases is entirely a numbers game. If they don't know who you are, you may not even get a chance to bid that project you'd like to do so very much. And lots of times we forget to sell to ourselves. That's bad. It makes for bad blood. sometimes even permanent fallings out. And if you don't talk to your people, your investors, and the inside folks, they can become disaffected and leave. You think you don't need crisis management? Well, what happens if a project you did goes south? Supposing somebody starts saying vicious things to you or about you on Twitter or Facebook or LinkedIn.
You know what
Do
else
you
I've
have a,
seen, Walt, is companies with products that they've just announced that are end up being delayed 6 months or a year.
yep. Do you have a crisis management plan to go along with your disaster recovery plan? Do you have a disaster recovery plan? Well, if you do, that's great. Keep them both up to date. And if you don't, well, oops. Just look at the Deepwater Horizon disaster. Think about it. Think about Stuxnet and Siemens' PCS7. Stuff happens, and everybody who faces the media and the public needs to have a message and training on staying on message. And here is where transparency and ruthless honesty make friends. Really. Public relations is not sales. Public relations is not advertising. Public relations is that part of marketing that's the glue that holds an integrated marketing communications plan together. PR communicates the plan itself. It's important to see how this works. PR communicates any and all of the ideas, the concepts, the values of the enterprise to all of the stakeholders of the enterprise, and to your customers, and to your competitors, and interested bystanders, and it's designed to attain a stated result. Sometimes that result is more buzz about your capabilities. Sometimes that result is a higher stock price, or just higher visibility in the market. Sometimes that result is crisis management.
Hey, Walt, as you're
One,
discussing products, can you also relate how services fit in? Obviously, products and services kind of are the same thing here, right?
well, that's something that I think goes without saying, but obviously it doesn't. You must consider a service that you offer the same as a product. So if you offer engineering services or integration services, or you make a flow meter or a level meter, it's still a product. And you need to consider it that way, and you need to put together PR and marketing and sales plans around those services as if they were a piece of hardware. One of the biggest fallacies people fall into when they think of PR is they think that a PR person can communicate anything they have to, true or not, and get coverage and belief. Well, you only have to look to the realm of politics and consumer business to see that that is far from true. PR can communicate facts and truth. Sure, the facts can be selected to produce the correct desired response, but they have to be true, and they have to be mostly the whole story. And they have to be interesting and worthy of being listened to. One of the most common mistakes people make is sending out the same old tired new product releases several times a year. Well, it isn't news, and nobody pays attention to it. And if you do it too often, that's spamming. Now, you have to tell the truth, no matter how unpleasant it is. If you've been good, you'll have an interesting story to tell. And if you've been bad, your stakeholders will have an interesting story to tell about you. It's always easier to stay in front of the parade. Look at the mess Toyota got into a couple of years ago. Not because they had problems, but because they lied about it and tried to cover it up over and over. As it turned out, the problems actually didn't mostly exist. But the hit to Toyota's brand, because they lied about it, is still having repercussions in sales. In the old days, you could tell people what to think because marketing owned all the information channels. With social media and the internet, this is very not true. There are so many ways to communicate satisfaction or dissatisfaction with a company now that you simply can't cover them all. Because the customers control the means of messaging, it's important to be open, honest, and forthright. Giving them more information is way better than giving them less. Social media isn't new, friends. There are graffiti on the walls of Pompeii. I think one of them says Decimus is a fink. Um, that's social media too. What's different is that it's so easy to be heard everywhere on Facebook, LinkedIn, Google Plus, Twitter, Foursquare, Pinterest. You keep going. There's a host of them. The history of the internet is the history of more and more access to the media for individual people. You don't have to mail a complaint to the vendor. Just post it to your favorite list. Very often, somebody from that company will call you up and say, "Can we help you?" When Robert Crandall was chairman of American Airlines, he commissioned a study that found that of every 10 people who had a bad experience with the airline, 3 would talk about it, but 7 would walk away and never come back. I think that's changed. Now I think it's more likely that 7 or 8 will give you a serious parting shot on social media as they walk away. So not only do you lose customers when you screw up, you hear about why they're leaving, and so does everybody else. The key to using social media is to use as many social media clients as you can, use them regularly, use them in a planned way, and make sure you are honest, direct, and clear. You can use email, Twitter, a Facebook page, a Facebook group, a LinkedIn group to keep your name and your brand in the public eye all the time. I like to use what Emerson has done as an example. They could do a whole lot better. Um, they've been given basically a C plus or a B by people who really know what they're talking about how well they're doing. But they are the best example of what you can do with social media in the automation industry. In fact, that's what Jim Cahill's job is, and it's working. Emerson is doing the one thing that counts more than anything in the world of social media. Your presence must be consistent. You can't post or blog or tweet once in a while. You have to develop a presence that's consistent and interesting. This is hard work, but the results and the rewards are amazing. Now let's talk about something that hasn't changed since the day of the origination of public relations. A campaign has a beginning and a middle and an end. A PR campaign is like a story, and if you think about planning a PR campaign as if you were telling a story, it's not only a good analogy, it also works really well in practice. First, you have to decide what the purpose of the campaign is. What is the result you're trying to achieve? Do you want to drive customers or editors or analysts to your website? Do you want to announce a new product, a new service? Do you want to trumpet the news of a big order or a new contract or a major strategic partnership or an alliance? Well, here's the good news. You can write a press release. It has to be news, noteworthy, well-written, topical, and targeted. Here's the bad news. A typical editor of a typical industrial trade journal or website gets between 1,000 and 1,500 press and product releases every month. If this doesn't give you pause, think about how long it takes just to read them. Most editorial departments do triage. They sort them into 2 piles, frequent advertisers and not frequent advertisers. So it helps to advertise, but only a little. They go through both piles. If in the first 2 seconds something about the release jumps out at them, they save it. They take longer for frequent advertisers. Otherwise, the release gets round filed. And in this day of electronic press releases, it's real easy to round file them. In self-defense many years ago, I stopped looking at printed releases, and I only look at email releases now. I can't remember the last time somebody mailed me a press release. This is good news and bad news. The good news is that I can handle them more easily. The bad news is that it's easier and cheaper to send them. So I get lots more of them. I get releases that aren't even close to my editorial purview at Control. I get political press releases from all 3 or 5 or 7 sides. I get releases on self-help books, you name it, because it's really easy to spam editors. That doesn't mean I read them. Uh, Now here's the real trick. The more you know the editors in your market and the more they know you, the easier it is to get your well-written, topical, targeted press or product release run. It is not about who you know as much as it is about do it right and be known to the editor. Editors can do lots of things for you. You can get interesting tidbits of competitive intelligence just by talking to them. Not necessarily a formal trading information for information, but hey, people talk to me, I talk to them. You can get that much sought after commodity, free publicity. Well, nothing's free, but you know, you can get article placements if the editor knows you and knows that you can deliver on time when you say you will. And if you know the editor, you'll know what style of writing and what style of image are most likely to get you the press coverage that you're looking for. Once you've achieved a relationship of mutual respect and trust with the editorial staff, especially of the publications that you really target, you can begin to pitch them articles for editorial space. These are priceless in the way they can affect the market for a product. But one of the greatest sins in industrial PR is submitting a puff piece for editorial coverage when you've agreed to submit a 1,500-word article that's bylined by one of your customers about a specific application.
Walt, are you going to
Editors,
define puff piece?
yeah, I'm going to.
Okay.
The editor saved space for you, and now he has to find something else to fit in those 4 pages because he's not going to put in an article that says Ummagumma Corporation's Wonder Whizzer is the best possible thing, says Ummagumma Corporation's customer Ben Whoozis. That's a puff piece. You need to have something that speaks about real applications by real people and has real meat to it. I may never accept another article from you if you do that to me, and neither will any other editor I know. It's a fundamental axiom that if you're going to participate in a trade show, you have to have a plan. Now, much of that plan is PR. If you're making a new product announcement, you need a PR plan. If you're making some strategic alliance allotment, you need a PR plan. If you're meeting with analysts and editors, you need a PR plan. If you want to get your most significant users to attend and visit your stand, you need a PR plan. A clear and smart PR plan for a trade show can make the difference between a lackluster and expensive experience and a vibrant and useful venture. For those of you who don't know the acronym, a SMART plan is a plan that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So it's a plan that you can do, have a goal, get it done by a specific time. If you don't have SMART plans, nothing actually gets done. Now, PR is the vehicle of choice to communicate the company brand. Together with advertising, it's the way the company speaks to its customer base and its competitors and the media and analysts who moderate the market space the company lives in. The difference between PR and advertising is that PR is bidirectional. It listens to its customers, competitors, the media, and the analysts and modifies what it says based on their input. The company brand must be communicated in a coherent and totally consistent way to everyone, the internal stakeholders, external stakeholders, and if you're a public company, the stockholders of the company. So what's branding? Well, you see the definition up there. A brand is the cognitive gestalt made up of all the knowledge, emotions, thoughts, and feelings. You can read it as well as I can. That's a big, fancy definition. Basically, your brand is everything you stand for. It's the image you've created and that you live up to every day in the marketplace. Anything you do to reinforce the positives in your brand can only help. But anything you do that contributes a negative to your brand image hurts. And by the law of 10,000 attaboys, a negative contribution to brand hurts more than a positive contribution to brand image helps. While marketing is designed to promote the company's products and services, and advertising is designed to generate sales, PR is designed to communicate the values on which the company stands. These are your values. These are the values that what stand behind your company's brand. These values are your company's bedrock. As long as the company acts in congruence with these values, then PR can further the image of the company and thus the company brand. When the company acts incongruously, PR can ameliorate the damage, but it can't entirely reduce it, and in cases of big, bad crises, may not be able to do a great deal. United Airlines has basically stopped using the tagline, "the friendly skies." Why? Well, simply put, United has a reputation for bad service, surly employees, and general unfriendliness. And frankly, so do most airlines. Their tagline was causing cognitive dissonance and was clearly losing them more friends than gaining them. The skies aren't very friendly. Southwest Airlines is a no-frills airline. They promise cheap fares and nothing else. And for over 25 years, Southwest has been the most successful airline in the world. Why? Because absolutely everything they do is congruent with their message, from the baggage handlers to the CEO. They do it with verve and with elan. They are entirely on brand. There's no cognitive dissonance with Southwest. You get what you expect, and sometimes more. While with United and most of the other airlines, you expect some service, some amenities, some civility, and what you get is a lousy airline that charges you plenty more money for your suitcase than it's really worth. Too many automation companies act the same way, and even the best PR councils can't fix that. Now, there's a current trend toward debasing strong brands. Even Southwest has fallen prey to this to some extent. The idea is that you can abuse just a little bit your customers without hurting your brand unduly. This supposed brand elasticity is supposed to allow you to extract more value from the customer without giving them more value or even giving them less value. Well, the other night, Jon Stewart said about the proposed makeover of the brave heroine Merida by Disney, they think they can get away with this because they think we are stupid. Well, your customers are not stupid, and they have very highly tuned super heterodyne BS detectors. Don't give them BS. They may let you get away with debasing your brand for a while, but they'll soon be looking around for another vendor with the values they originally saw in you and in your product and your services. Just as PR is a channel for external communications, so it can be for internal communications. It's every bit as important for employees, suppliers, and other internal stakeholders to be informed on the company's objectives, goals, and values as it is for analysts, editors in the media, and for stockholders to be informed. Communicating the company's brand values and vision internally continually reinforces them in the minds of employees and reduces the potential for cognitive dissonance when a customer runs across a problem employee. Just like Southwest makes sure that all of its employees are on brand and on message, so should you. BP fell afoul of this in the Deepwater Horizon mess. BP had, in the 5 years between the Texas City disaster and Deepwater Horizon, spent over $2 billion, that's with a B, on training designed to create a new safety culture in the company. Unfortunately, even though that effort had support from the very highest levels in the company, Tony Haywood himself, the CEO and chairman, made it mandatory. It ran afoul of employees in some of the divisions of the company who felt it was better to continue maximizing their own bonuses and so forth by not improving safety. And the result is that BP has now spent many more billions trying to fix the problems that their employees caused. If all those employees had been truly on board with the safety culture that Tony Haywood, Deb Gruby, and Ed Sieg were trying to create in BP, it's arguable In fact, I think I can prove that the Deepwater Horizon accident might not have happened. Think about that, and think about how important communicating that set of brand values could have been. Well, typically the only way PR is knowingly used in most automation companies is for shareholder communications. Shareholders need the same communications that the internal stakeholders do. And companies who are forthright and forthcoming with their stockholders and their stakeholders do better at maintaining their stock prices, even in the wake of unfavorable news, than companies who ignore their stockholders except for the annual report or the quarterly analyst briefing and ignore their stakeholders entirely. The lessons learned from the downsizing of the 1980s is really clear. I hope we someday, learn those lessons. If you want a workforce that's on board with the goals and objectives, vision, and brand of the company, you must be completely honest and open with them, especially about bad news. Hiding the fact that layoffs are coming produces good old cognitive dissonance, which leads immediately to a loss of trust in management. Employees, just like your customers, have extremely well-tuned super heterodyne bullshit detectors. Remember, I said that before. And it's stupid to even try to fool them or think that they don't know what's going on just because you haven't announced it yet. Oh, and then there's the crisis. Every industrial enterprise dreads the crisis. The call comes in the middle of the night. Your oil tanker is aground. Your mine has collapsed. Somebody's plant has exploded and your product was at fault. There's a leak in the groundwater. Whatever it is, you need to have planned for how to handle a crisis. Have a team in place to manage it, take responsibility, perform corrective action quickly, and provide easy access to information as honestly and transparently open as you possibly can. These rules are deceptively simple, and companies fail the crisis test every day. Maybe it's just too simple. The secret to crisis management is to be open, honest, and work hard to solve the problem. If it's your fault, accept responsibility early in the crisis and start corrective action immediately. Don't waffle. Don't say we're investigating. Take your lumps. The corrective action you say you will take must be clear, quick, meaningful, and you actually must use it to correct the problem and make the situation whole again. Stonewalling in a crisis will just get you what Nixon got. If it's not your fault, communicate that at every opportunity while emphasizing that you're there, shirt sleeves rolled up, working to solve the problem anyway. Remember that you're telling a story as it is happening. You are a reporter for your company's side of the story. Keep it to who, what, when, where, how, and why as much as you can. The simpler the story you tell, the more likely it will not be changed much by the media as they report it. All right, everything I've told you is true, but it begs the question. The real issue is, how do you actually put together an integrated marketing communications plan that works? For the next few minutes, we're going to look at a new way of seeing the problem. I find it useful to look at the things you need to do as part of a cascade control loop. Appropriate for automation industry marketing, isn't it? Look at the tasks as outbound communications first. All of these things allow your customers to find you, touch you, and on their terms. Note that every single one of them is designed to make you authoritative in the sense that Google thinks so. The more authoritative you appear to Google, the higher you will appear in the organic search rankings, and the majority, maybe even the vast majority of customers find you on Google now. Note that all of this is content. It's high-value content. You can't post much self-serving bullshit on Wikipedia. It'll get taken down. You'll get called on it. And people stop reading white papers if they are thinly disguised brochureware. Ever since the studies showed that, except for political hot-button issues, Wikipedia is as authoritative as any other reference work, which is why Encyclopedia Britannica went out of business, people have been looking up automation-related topics there. And one of the most significant things you can do is to make sure that you have good Wikipedia pages for the company, for its products, and that your principals and your experts have biographical essays, CVs, and bibliographies on Wikipedia. It's also worth many bonus points to contribute to pages on industry issues. Wikipedia can then become the core of your campaign to make your brand authoritative. Now, highly technical marketing has always had a spot for articles and white papers. The problem is that while everybody knows that you should write them, everyone also has the opinion that if an employee has the time to write them, he or she isn't doing the real job or is underemployed. This is not a good thing for the employee. But nothing could be further from the truth. The fact is, customers desperately want non-commercial sources of information, and your company has some of the best possible experts on how to apply the products that you make that you can find anywhere. It's really important to create good, high-quality, non-commercial white papers, applications, case study articles. Again, like social media, the important thing is that you have to do this consistently so that customers and potential customers can expect to see new material from you on a regular schedule. There are also numerous ways to campaign those white papers and articles too, and the sales leads you get from doing that are generally either A or B level leads. That's really important. Presentations, short courses, and webinars are another way to attract an audience to share your expertise. Once again, these cannot be sales pitches. Webinars used to be prohibitively expensive to do, but with tools like GoToWebinar, which happens to be the webinar engine that Sherry and I are using today, anyone can produce, present, and record a webinar. And recorded webinars are tremendous sources of more data for Wikipedia. You see how it feeds back and feeds around? And once you've recorded your presentation, post it on YouTube. There are thousands of automation-related audio and video tracks on YouTube. You can stream them to your website, you can campaign them, you can send them to people to use in many different ways using social media. How much viewership can something like flow measurement, for example, get? Well, I have an answer. The video of me talking about back to basics differential pressure flow measurement has had over 55,000 viewings in 4 years.
Whoa.
That's how important it is, and that's the kind of mileage that you can get out of it. Now, just like Wikipedia is the anchor of your outbound communication loop, your own blogs are the linchpin of the inbound communication loop. Yes, blogging is an outbound activity, but the reason you're doing it is to increase the creation of a community around your company and your products. But you can't just blog. You have to push the stuff you're blogging, as well as all the stuff you're producing as outbound content, to your customers and the people who might become your customers. And blogging must be consistent. You can have one blog or multiple blogs, but each blog should have its own voice that people come to recognize and come to follow. Now, here's where social media are critical. This is how you interact with your customers and your stakeholders, how you disseminate the knowledge you have amassed and the content you have created. And here's where you get to listen to people commenting on what you say, because they expect you to listen to them. This is the feedback portion of the cascade control loop. This entire system, the entire integrated marketing communications program, depends on content, and lots of it. The good news is that there are content creators available who are capable of producing just as much content as you want or need without breaking your bank. Look for people with industry and application-specific knowledge already. You should not have to spend hours or days teaching the content provider your business. What's a flow meter? You don't need to do that. There's lots of people out there who already know what a flow meter is. For example, I've been writing white papers and application case studies for people for years, long before I became editor of Control. And what I asked for is a 100-word synopsis of what the article's supposed to be about, and 8 to 10 bullet points of things that you want emphasized in the article. And then I turn around and give you a first draft, and very often that first draft is right on the money. I'm not the only person who can do that. There are lots of people, and there are really good content providers that I recommend to people when they ask. You do have to spend the money, though. You can't just say you're going to do all these things. You have to have the content written or produced, and you have to have schedules for producing and publishing it. People have to be on the hook for doing it, or they won't. And otherwise, you're just mouthing motherhood statements. Sounds great when you're talking to the board of directors, but it's not getting you what it is that you want. And then you'll have the opinion that all this newfangled interactive marketing communication stuff doesn't work. Well, it does. You don't. Pardon me for being blunt. So that's PR for automation professionals. I went real fast, but I hope you have a better understanding of PR's place in the marketing mix, how important proper use of public relations can be to the strength of your company and your company's brand. In a minute, we're going to open up the discussion to questions, but I want to thank you really from the bottom of my heart for the opportunity to speak to you today. I've enjoyed it, and I hope you have too. We'll be posting the recording of this webinar, but if you want a PDF copy of the speaker's notes, send me your contact information at walt@waltboyes.com, and I'll see that you get one. If after the webinar you have questions on a specific issue, feel free to contact me, either at Control Magazine or at Spitzer & Boyes, LLC. Sherry, I'm ready for questions whenever you are.
Awesome. Walt, do you have a slide that has your email on it?
No, I don't. But
Okay.
Control Magazine, my email is wboyes@putman.net, and my Spitzer & Boyes email is walt@waltboyes.com. Pretty easy
Okay.
to remember.
Well, I'm sure actually just Google you and you're found multiple ways. Um,
Yes.
so if
Dick Morley gave me a button a few years ago that says, "Sometimes when I'm alone, I Google myself."
I remember that. Oh man, we won't go there. Okay, so we have a couple questions. If anyone else has a question, please go ahead, put them in the queue. And I want to get it started. First off, Rachel had asked the question about she's with a service-oriented system integrator and wanted to know about
Mm-hmm.
product. Rachel, if you would type in again and let me know, did we sufficiently answer your question that your services are your product and need to be marketed as such? And if you need further explanation on that, let us know. Um,
For purposes of marketing and public relations, there's no objective difference between a service and a hardware product. An example is that software is a product, and there's no hardware other than the distribution mechanism. And in some cases, since a lot of software is now downloaded direct from the internet, there's no hardware at all. There's no physical medium, just like a service.
And in fact, a lot of companies these days are making more money off their services than they are off their hardware products. We have a question from Jody, which is a good one. It hits home for me too. Is it effective to hire writers to write articles on behalf of your company, which you kind of addressed earlier? And then this doesn't seem to aid in social media opportunities if the writer isn't with the company, which I can address if you don't want to, Walt.
No, I'll address it. The fact is that you've put together two completely separate things. The first is that in order to practice social media, you have to have the content with which to do it. It's very effective because mostly you don't have the time, and it's not your job to create all of this massive amount of content that your customers and the stakeholders of your company want and need and demand right now. So it's very effective to hire technically competent people to write that content for you. That's completely different than doing social media around that content. That's something that you have to do basically internally, or hire a company who is going to do that for you as a service. It's another product that companies offer from time to time. Uh, does that make sense?
Yeah, in fact, I just wanted to let you know, when I first got into the whole social media area, now I run a small agency that focuses on the automation space. So we have knowledge that's almost like being internal to a company. And I got into a big argument with someone who does social media for anyone who asks. So any company that asks, she says, we'll go in and we'll run your campaign. And so I got into an argument and said, okay, well, what would you do if a company was selling, they're launching a new product? It's a 16-bit data acquisition system that's primarily used in spectroscopy. And of
Oh,
course,
you're mean.
I am, I had a point to make. So she, of course, had a blank stare. And I said, okay, I can see where you may be able to do social media for some companies, but you can't if you don't understand the technology. So Jody, there are a number of companies out there that can do social media for you, and it's as if they are internal to your company. We do it. Joel Don, who's on the call, is doing it. In fact, for ISA, he's their social media community manager. He's not a direct ISA employee, although kind of is, but he's managing a monster social media campaign, and he's not one of the internal administrators. He was hired to do just that. So there are plenty of people. The trick is, do you know the topic? And whether you're internal to the company or external, as long as you know the topic, you can do a good job. And in many cases, external people can do a better job because that's their job. So they know how to do it. They're not fumbling. They know what works, what doesn't when you get online. And there are lots of gotchas, as you might have heard if you were at Joel Don's LinkedIn webinar that we just had a couple weeks ago. Lots of places you can get in trouble on LinkedIn. If you missed that, we just posted the link to that on the blog and to Facebook. Um, let's see, comment from Niall, who says, great presentation. Thank you very much, and I appreciate that. And then I have another question. Walt, some companies are posting their press releases to the wires, Business Wire, PR Newswire, whatever it is. And part of it is to get the the search engine hit. So extra keywords coming
Mm-hmm.
in from an external source. Do you editors in the automation space actually read the wires?
Very infrequently. Now, this doesn't mean you shouldn't do it. Business Wire, for example, doesn't segment for editors the way I need them to. I can get software, I can get high tech and things like that, but the automation industry is such a tiny pimple on Business Wire
I prefer
that
to call it a niche.
they don't even think to do that. And so when I look at my Business Wire feed or my PR News feed every morning, I can go through 300 news releases before I find one that's even halfway relevant to what I'm talking about. The the reason you should use those is because people like Forbes and Business Week and things like that, the mainstream media pull off of those wires, and it's very useful. And occasionally you do get coverage from people like Forbes or the other business magazines and things like that. What you should also do, and a lot of companies don't do, is you should also send it directly to your list of relevant technical editors.
That's
And
more important than the newswire.
that list isn't that hard to put together and maintain. There are not that many, even on a global basis. There's less than 150 editors, magazines, websites that are relevant to the automation industry and that are worth sending releases to. I know this because at Spitzer and Boyes I maintain just such a list. So I can tell you that it's not 10,000 people that you need to send this to, which is what Business Wire is going to tell you, that they can simplify all of this. But they don't send those releases to me unless you specifically tell them to do that. So yeah, you should do those things if you can afford to. If you can't afford to do it, it's pretty easy to maintain your own list of editors that you should send releases to.
Or hire
And
an
don't
agency that
forget,
does.
or hire an agency that does. Don't forget, too, to send releases to your local media near your place of business.
Good
They
point.
like hearing what companies do. And you'd be surprised. Some of your customers might actually be within your local area and they may want to learn about it too.
Well, we have some more questions backed up here.
Go ahead.
Mike Nager, how are you, my dear? Nice to see you. Mike has a question. What kind of metrics or KPIs do you recommend to determine the effectiveness of PR and marketing programs, online or otherwise? Man, I could spend all day on that question. Go ahead,
Yeah, I
Walt.
could too. I could too. Mike, that's a when did you stop beating your wife question. Uh, the fact is that you can develop KPIs, you can develop metrics, but there are no generic KPIs or metrics that I can give you across the board. I did a project for a client of Spitzer and Boyes earlier this year, and I said, okay, what do you think you should be measuring based on what you're going to be doing for this specific activity? And they came back and said, well, we should get this. And I said, there's your KPI. Did you get that? How close did you come to it? But it's going to depend specifically on the exactly what the activity it is that you're doing, and what you expect the results to be.
And there's lots of interesting discussions going on, let's say, about the level of intermediary KPIs you want to measure. Obviously, the bottom line is we want to get to sales. But in the meantime, do we look at likes on Facebook, or do we care more about comments? Do we look at hits on the blog, or do we look at actual engaged conversations? And all of them are useful to one extent or another, but you really do have to look at them all to get a big picture of what's really going on.
What I like to do, in fact, that's a great point, Sherry. What I like to do, in fact, is to come up with a figure of merit that incorporates a whole bunch of those things. Because what you're really trying to do is to increase the number of times you are talked about. And you have data on the number of times people talk about you. Come up with a figure of merit benchmark for where you are now and where you want to be. And then you need to see if that figure of merit benchmark and the change in it correlates with new requests for quotation, for new sales activity, or whatever it is that you're trying to do. You may not get a correlation, which means you may have to go back and change what you're doing. Don't forget, this is a test it, do it, test it, do it, test it, do it kind of environment.
Marketing is a constant series of experiments. We have a client that has really perfected the art of KPIs, and we found, that there are certain key ones that we watch. On the PR side, we follow all the pickups and then assign them a value as if they were advertising space. How much are we getting? And we're constantly looking at, what value we're getting for the PR based on that. So, big feature articles obviously have much more value than the little product pickups, but we like to see a mixture of both. When we come over to the pay-per-click side, obviously we're measuring conversions there, not just clicks, because a click is useless unless you get the information. So each media type has a different priority level, and the bottom line for them is these are all intermediary metrics. What they found to be most indicative of sales is how many people download the PDFs. So whether it's a PDF of the data sheet or the catalog or the articles, The total number of PDF downloads per month is the best indicator of what sales are going to do over the next coming months. So again, you mix and you match and you experiment, and eventually you'll fine tune that to a fairly narrow definition of a few key metrics. But it could be something different for each company. If you have
It
really,
is going to be something different
yeah,
for each company.
if you
And
have
it's going to be something different for each product or service that you're trying to move.
if you have cruddy PDFs, then don't measure based on PDF downloads. Nancy Zero. Hey, Nancy, nice to see you again. Nancy asked, do you think it highly important to restructure the release or presentation for international cultures? Good question.
Well, I wouldn't call your product the Nova if you're going to market it in South America, um, or any of the other incredible horror stories that people have done, um, whether they're real or whether they're urban legends, like the characters for the first set of characters for Coca-Cola in China, literally translated to bite the wax tadpole. You don't want to do that kind of stuff, and you should pay attention. If, for example, you are going to release your press release globally, one of the things that a lot of U.S. companies fail to do is put metric measurements in it. People in other countries who don't usually use feet per second or inches or things like that have only a pretty hazy understanding of what exactly that means, where they do know meters per second, millimeters, centimeters, and things like that. Um, it's a really good convention if you're going to send your press release out globally to at least do that when you're talking about the specifications of your product.
Heck,
Put
here,
the temperature specs in Fahrenheit and Celsius.
even here in the US, a lot of companies are just use metrics, so we definitely should have that in there.
That's one of the things you should do. And the other thing you should do is to remember that when you send a press release out internationally, the person that is receiving that press release is generally not a native English speaker. This means that you should use extremely simple constructions
Mm.
in your sentences. Declarative sentences use the most common meaning of a word. Don't use words that mean something three or four different ways. Don't and be sure that you know what that word means or what that phrase means, um, where you are distributing the press release. Here's an example that shows just how different English speakers can be. Um, in England, it means substantially different thing than it does in the U.S. to say to somebody, "Well, I'll knock you up in the morning."
Oh man.
Think about it. What the person is saying is, "I'll come around and see you in the morning." That's not what we think he's saying.
No knocking up in press releases, please.
That's right. So you have to be real cognizant of that. And if you don't know how to do that, then get yourself some help with people who do.
Well, Nancy said thank you. I believe she said perfect answer when you talked about the metrics, not the knocking up. But she said she hadn't thought of that, so thank you.
Good.
Pedro said, very interesting webinar, thank you. And then with a little wink, he asked if you're willing to, you or I suppose, are willing to share that list of editors. Mine is available for a fee. I don't know about Walt's.
Spitzer and Boyes exists to make money for Dave and me.
There you go.
So same deal.
Sorry, Pedro, it's going to cost money. All right, we have a question from Jeff. Oh, hey, Jeff, how are you? Jeff Hartsock. For a small services company of less than 10 million in revenue, what type of budget is suggested to even make a dent? Should it primarily be focused on creating high value content versus advertising, sponsorships, exhibits? Where are the best resources to assist in this content delivery? Oh boy, that's a big question, Jeff.
Well, I'll answer it as simply as I can. The fact is that I have been involved with several companies in that size range. And what I found is that for companies in that size range, the biggest bang for the buck is producing authoritative content.
Yeah, agreed.
Um, Now, this doesn't mean that I'm telling you that you should not advertise in Control Magazine or on controlglobal.com, just in case anybody from the company is listening to me. But what I'm saying is that what you can do is, for example, controlglobal.com provides the ability to campaign content. You have a white paper, controlglobal.com, and of course other people. Controlglobal.com can help you for a fee campaign that and turn that into sales leads. That's much more effective for the company the size that you're describing than doing a 12 times a year full page advertising campaign in Control Magazine. There's room for that kind of advertising, but if you're $10 million in volume and you probably have 10 employees, focus on generating high quality content and getting that high quality content out to the people who want to read it so they can become familiar with what it is that you do and how good you are and how knowledgeable you are at what it is that you do.
We have a great success story, a client that we worked with a few years ago where we worked very closely with Walt in Control. And Walt did not pay me to say this, but they were kind of unknown, small player in the instrument market. They decided to get serious about their PR program, started regularly announcing new products, new business announcements, partnerships, all that good stuff, wrote articles that were placed in Control, and a year's worth of effort, and then the reader survey come around. You probably know who I'm getting at now, Walt. All of a sudden they
Oh, I know
started
who it was. I knew it. I knew who it was the minute you said it.
all
Um,
all of a
all of a
sudden they
sudden,
started appearing. Go ahead, Walt.
they started appearing in the Reader's Choice Awards, um,
With the
which
big
you
guys.
cannot buy
Yeah.
because it's an unaided choice survey from 20,000 people. They got such a good brand image that one of the major automation companies swooped in and bought them.
Worked out really well. That was mostly based on some darn good PR. So thank you, Walt.
So it does work, and Sherry and I can prove it.
Exactly, exactly. These aren't just things we're making up. This really does happen. So thank you, Jeff. I'm glad that answered your question. This is Annie. I have a question on crisis management. When the momentum of the crisis passes, people start to forget about it and media moves on to the next big thing happening somewhere else. Should the company just let it go at that point and move on?
No, the company can, that needs to be, the end game needs to be part of your crisis management plan, because the end game is how to wind down your crisis management activities in an organized way so that it doesn't look like you're going, oh boy, we're off the hook on that one, man. We're on to the next crisis now. You don't want to do that. And if there's stuff that you committed that your company was going to do, it doesn't hurt. In fact, it helps a lot to come out and say, last month we did X, Y, and Z in our plan to ameliorate the crisis that our equipment caused, blah, blah, blah. If that makes sense, you can turn, that's the principle of making lemonade. You can turn the crisis into a very positive story about your response to the crisis. One of the things that I heard about a company that I used to be involved with many, many years ago is, and this has stuck with me. Well, they're not perfect, but they sure do apologize quickly and they fix their mistakes. Now, there's another company in the automation industry that I I once wrote an article about, and if you want to know the story, I'll tell you. Um, they put in a new product at a power company in the South to replace a whole bunch of products that had been in for years and years and years, and the product didn't work. Product had a sale price of about $3,500. They spent over $150,000 very publicly fixing the problem because they needed the product to work and because they told the company that it would work and they had to keep their word. They were able to make real lemonade out of this because they sold hundreds more of this product to that same company, even though the first one they put in didn't work. Why? Because they kept their word. They said the product would work, and they just basically busted their hump to make sure that it did work, and finally they made it work, regardless of what it cost them. And then they were willing to talk about it. I had to twist their arms to get the story out of them, because companies don't want to talk about, well, my equipment didn't work. Well, sometimes that can be a really good intro to a good story about what kind of brand values you really do have. You stand behind what it is that you do. You're willing to spend much more money than you made on that one particular thing. And you don't just say, well, if you don't like it, send it back.
Um, okay, well, I'm going to cut things off here because we're way over our time. Thank you very much, Walt. As always, an interesting talk. Walt's going to be doing a 4-hour workshop of the PR 101 topic down at the Marketing and Sales Summit in New Orleans this year. So that's September 11th. And please register online. We'd love to see you there. So all the good stuff that he just started to get into here, he'll now have 4 hours to get into lots of good detail. And if Jeff is still on, Jeff figured out who we were talking about. Of course he would figure out. But anyway, I won't go into that. Okay, so thank you all very much. This is presented to you by the ISA Marketing and Sales Summit, September 11th through 13th in New Orleans at the W Hotel. Register online at marketingsalessummit.com. I will be posting this recording and the PowerPoint online shortly. I have to take a little time to get it all together. But thank you. And then if you want Walt's PDF, I will post information on how to get in touch with him as well. This is Sherry Worthington. I thank you all, and I will see you at our next webinar, June 13th, on how to put on an awesome webinar with Jeff Cawley from Northwest Analytical. Thank you all. Have an awesome afternoon.